It was a humid Texas night, the kind that wrapped around you like a heavy blanket, when deputies were called to a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Austin. The complaint was simple enough. Neighbors said they'd heard strange noises in the backyard of a small blue house at the end of the street. Crying, one said. Others insisted it was more like muffled screams, the kind that made the hairs on your arm stand up even if you couldn't explain why. When the officers arrived, everything looked painfully ordinary. A modest home, a neatly trimmed lawn, a wooden swing hanging from a rusted frame in the backyard, gently swaying though there was no wind. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt wrong. The air around that swing seemed heavier, thicker, like the ground itself was holding a secret. Then they noticed the dirt, freshly turned earth, just beneath the swing, darker than the surrounding grass. The soil was uneven, as if someone had been digging in haste. One officer leaned down, brushing his hand across the mound. The soil was warm, moist, and then faint, almost too soft to trust. There it was, a sound. A muffled thump like a weak heartbeat, struggling beneath the earth. They froze. "God, did you hear that?" one whispered. The ground shuddered again, and this time the sound was unmistakable. Someone, something was beneath them, alive. With frantic hands, the officers began tearing at the dirt. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, beams of light shaking with each hurried movement. The earth gave way slowly, stubborn, clinging to its secret. Then a small, trembling hand broke through the soil, clawing for air. Fingers, thin and weak, reaching into the night. The men pulled harder, desperate, until finally the boy emerged, gasping, choking, his face streaked with dirt and terror. His lips quivered, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed against the ground, clinging to the grass, as if it were the only thing tethering him to life. The swing creaked above them, swaying in eerie rhythm, as though mocking the scene below. The boy could barely speak. His voice was raw, strangled, his words fragmented. But the officers caught pieces of it. She put me there. Mama, don't let her. The words caught in the humid air like poison. His mother? The front door opened then, slow, deliberate. Out stepped a woman in her mid-30s, barefoot, her nightgown fluttering against the still air. Her face was calm, too calm. No panic, no shock, no confusion, only stillness, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Her name was Sarah Holloway. To her neighbors, she was just another single mother, polite enough, quiet, maybe a little strange, but never alarming. Now, standing under the porch light, she looked like a figure carved from ice. The officers shouted for her to stay where she was, but she didn't move. She didn't run. She didn't even ask what had happened. She simply tilted her head toward the boy lying in the grass and said in a flat, detached tone, "You shouldn't have taken him out." Her words chilled them more than the sight of the child gasping for breath. Why would a mother bury her son alive beneath a swing set? How long had he been there? How many times had she done this before? The boy clutched one officer's sleeve, his nails digging into the fabric as though his life depended on it. "Please, don't let her touch me again." His plea was so soft, yet it carried through the night like thunder. The backyard smelled of soil and sweat. But there was something else, too, something sour, metallic, like fear given a scent. The swing kept moving, creak, 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 as if the night itself refused to be silent. Inside the house, investigators would later find unsettling details. Children's toys neatly arranged in the living room, dustless as if untouched for years. Family photos on the wall, all missing the boy as though he had been erased from his own home. And in the kitchen, taped to the refrigerator, a note written in jagged handwriting. Under the earth, he will be safe. Safe. That word hung in the air like a curse. The boy was rushed to the hospital, his body weak from lack of oxygen, his skin scratched raw from clawing against the suffocating dirt. Doctors said he was lucky minutes later, and the story would have ended differently. But as horrifying as it was, this was only the surface of what lay hidden beneath that quiet Texas home. Because Sarah Holloway was not screaming. She was not crying. She was not pleading innocence. She sat calmly in the back of the squad car, staring blankly ahead. And when asked why she had buried her own son alive, she whispered a line that froze the blood of everyone who heard it. He doesn't belong above the ground. The night closed in, heavy and suffocating. The neighborhood that once felt safe now seemed poisoned, its quiet broken forever. Mothers locked their doors tighter. Children avoided the swing that still stood in the Holloway backyard, unmoved as if waiting for its next victim. But what could possibly drive a mother to bury her child beneath the very swing where he once laughed and played? That answer, what lay behind Sarah's cold words, would unravel in ways far darker than anyone could have imagined. And this was only the beginning. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of the monitor. The boy lay pale against the white sheets, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Doctors said he would survive physically, but the deeper wounds, those carved into his mind, would not heal so easily. Each time the door opened, he flinched, his eyes darting toward the hallway in terror, as if expecting her to appear. Sarah Holloway, his mother, sat in the county jail miles away. The arresting officer said she never once asked about her son's condition. She never cried. She never demanded a lawyer. She simply sat, staring at the wall, her lips sometimes twitching, as though repeating words only she could hear. The detectives quickly learned this wasn't just an isolated act of madness. There were layers, disturbing layers, that stretched back years. Neighbors remembered Sarah as odd but harmless. She rarely invited anyone over. Her son Matthew was almost never seen outside. Some neighbors assumed he was sickly, perhaps homeschooled, kept away to protect him. But now, in hindsight, those absences painted a darker truth. Matthew hadn't been kept inside for his health. He had been hidden. When investigators searched the Holloway home, they found notebooks tucked away in locked drawers. Page after page filled with Sarah's erratic handwriting. The words were obsessive, repeating the same chilling phrases again and again. Under the ground, he is safe. The earth protects him. The world will corrupt, but the soil will cleanse. It read less like a diary and more like the manifesto of someone lost in her own twisted faith. But faith in what? Digging deeper into her past, detectives uncovered that Sarah's own childhood had been marked by tragedy. She grew up in a rural Texas town, raised by a deeply religious grandmother after her parents abandoned her. The grandmother's beliefs were extreme, bordering on cult-like. She often told Sarah that children must be tested by the earth to remain pure. At the time, no one thought much of it, eccentric ramblings of an old woman. But now, faced with the reality of Matthew's ordeal, the phrase seemed like a prophecy carried across generations. Back at the precinct, detectives questioned Sarah. She sat stone still, her eyes never leaving the floor. "Why did you bury your son alive?" one asked. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a grimace. "Because it's the only way to keep him from them." "From who?" the detective pressed. She lifted her eyes, and for the first time since her arrest, her voice carried weight. "From all of you. From the sickness outside. The dirt protects. The dirt forgives. He must learn beneath the soil before he can rise above it." The words chilled the room. There was no anger in her tone, only conviction, as though she truly believed burying her child alive was an act of love. Meanwhile, Matthew slowly began to talk. His voice was fragile, breaking with fear, but the fragments he shared painted a horrifying picture. He described how his mother would sometimes dig a shallow pit beneath the swing, whispering prayers as she lowered him inside. He remembered the suffocating darkness, the sound of the soil covering him, the weight pressing down on his chest. Sometimes she left him there for hours, sometimes longer. He whispered a phrase that made every listener shudder. She said the earth was my cradle. Detectives revisited the backyard, searching more thoroughly. What they found beneath the swing set turned their stomachs. Multiple layers of disturbed soil, evidence that the boy had been buried more than once. And deeper still, beneath the fresh dirt, they unearthed smaller bones, animal remains, birds, cats, even a small dog. Each burial had been a rehearsal, a practice for something far more horrifying. The case spiraled into national headlines. How could a mother commit such an act? Was it madness, or was it the continuation of a twisted legacy passed down through her family? Forensic psychologists were brought in to evaluate Sarah. Their conclusion was unsettling. She was not delusional in the traditional sense. She knew what she was doing. She understood the risks, the pain, the danger. But in her mind, it was all justified. She wasn't trying to kill her son. She was trying to purify him. The courtroom would later echo with the boy's soft testimony, his words trembling as he described the darkness, the dirt, the cold, and the sound of the swing creaking above him as he begged to be let out. Jurors wept openly. But Sarah never once looked at him. She only repeated her mantra, "Under the earth, he is safe." When the trial ended, the verdict was inevitable. Sarah Holloway was sentenced to life behind bars. Yet even as she was led away, she whispered one final chilling line to the reporters who shouted questions at her. "You'll see, the dirt always takes back what belongs to it." Today, the Holloway house stands abandoned. The swing still sways when the wind cuts across the yard, though locals swear it sometimes moves when the air is completely still. Children avoid it. Parents cross the street to keep their distance. Some say at night, if you stand quietly by the fence, you can hear faint scratching beneath the earth. Whether that's imagination, fear, or something else entirely, no one wants to find out. And so the story lingers, not just in the headlines or in the court records, but in the whispers of a Texas neighborhood that will never sleep as soundly again. Because sometimes the greatest horrors don't come from strangers or monsters in the dark. Sometimes they come from the very people meant to protect us. And Matthew Holloway will carry that truth forever. If you think nightmares end when you wake up, remember the story and think again. Subscribe for more true horror, because the darkest stories are the ones closest to home.